Hello everyone, welcome to CISA This Much. This is Aditya, and today we are going to look, into three questions, and the topic is false positive, false negative. Lots of students are getting confused, when to select false positive and when to select false negative, and the confusion increases, when different questions are having different answers. Roughly, you can find three questions. Now here the first question is on the topic of biometric system. The second question is on the topic of vulnerability scanning tools, and the third question is on the topic of IDS. So different questions and different answers, when to select false positive and when to select false negative, where lots of students are getting confused. So we will look into these three questions, and then I'll give you one chart with the help of which you can easily attempt any question on false positive or false negative. All right, so before going to that chart, let's discuss these questions. So question number one is, I hope you can look at the screen. Question number one is, during an operational audit of a biometric system used to control physical access, biometric system physical access, which of the following should be the greatest concern to an IS auditor? False positive, lack of biometric training. False negative, user acceptance of biometrics. Next question is, which of the following is the greatest risk associated with vulnerability scanning tools used to identify security weaknesses? False positive, outdated signatures for detection, use of open source tools. False negative. The third question is, which of the following should most concern an IS auditor reviewing an intrusion detection system? IDS. Number of false negatives, legitimate traffic blocked by the system. Number of false positives, reliability of IDS logs. Okay, now before getting into these questions and getting into the answers, let us discuss the chart. So guys, there are two charts. One chart is for vulnerability scanning tools. Just a second. One chart is on vulnerability scanning tools or IDS, and the other chart is on biometric. Okay, now in both the cases answer will change. All right, now you have to understand that there are four things: true positive, true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative. Okay, so true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative. Okay, now there are two things. I stands for how it will identify, identification, and R stands for the reality. What is there? What's the reality? Okay, so identification and reality. Now true positive means, when I say true positive means identification. It identifies it as an attack, and the reality is also like that, it's an attack. Okay, so basically here in this case, in case of true positive, the IDS or the vulnerability scanning tool identifies that particular activity, that particular event as an attack, and in the reality also it's an attack. Okay, this is true positive. Okay, now there is true negative. What is true negative? The scanning tool or the IDS identifies it as acceptable. Okay, and the reality is also it is acceptable. There is no issue at all. Okay, next is false positive. False positive means the tool or the IDS, it identifies it as an attack, but the reality is it is acceptable. Okay, and what is false negative? False negative is the scanning tool is identifying that particular activity as acceptable, but in the reality it's an attack. Okay, so identification as acceptable, but in the reality it's an attack. Okay, now you have to answer these two questions: what is false alarm and what is most serious and dangerous here? Okay, false alarm in case of vulnerability scanning tools and ideas is false. What's the answer? False positive. False positive is nothing but false alarm in this case. And what is most serious and most dangerous? False negative. Okay, where the tool or the ideas is identifying it as acceptable, but in the reality it's an attack. All right, so obviously this will be most dangerous. Right, now this is the case of vulnerability scanning tools or ideas. Let's look at the next case. Biometric. Again, same thing. True, positive, true, negative, false, positive, false, negative. True, positive, true, negative, false, positive, false, negative. Again, same. I means identification, R means reality. Okay, so in case of true positive, the biometric is identifying that person as allowed, and in the reality he's actually allowed, right? So no, nothing to worry here. What is true negative? Identification as he's not allowed, and in the reality also he is not allowed. Again, no problem. Okay, here the device, the biometric system is working fine, right? Now what exactly is false positive? False positive is identification as allowed, but in the reality should not be allowed. Identification as allowed, but in the reality should not be allowed. So is it risky or not risky? It is risky, right? Now what is false negative? Identification as not allowed. Okay, identification as not allowed. Okay, the system is stopping that person to enter, but in the reality he should be allowed. Okay, now this is also bad, like we have a detailed discussion on biometric video where I have explained many things here, but like for this particular video, my focus is to solve those three questions and to give you a quick chart, like when to select which answer, right? So here, in case of biometric, what is more like risky and dangerous? It is false positive, because the person is identifies as allowed, but in reality he should not be allowed. Okay, so it is risky. This is also bad. False negative is also bad, but again, it is not that bad, because the thing is that here uh, you are stopping a person who is who should be allowed. But the thing is that this, like if this happens, like you are allowing a person who should not be allowed, then that person can be risk to the organization. Okay, so he can do anything. Okay, so this is more risky thing, false positive, in case of biometric, right? Now let me compare this chart and this chart. Here false positive means identification as attack, reality is acceptable. Identification is attack, reality is acceptable. Okay, but here identification as allowed, reality is should not be allowed. Okay, now the meaning changes. The meaning changes in both the cases, right? So here when I say false accept, what is false accept? What is false accept? False positive. What is false reject? False negative. What is dangerous? False positive. So the question is vulnerability scanning tools or ideas, the answer will be false negative, as more riskier, most serious, more dangerous. I mean, where the ISO auditor will be having most concern. Okay, the biggest concern for an ISO auditor, the greatest concern for an ISO auditor, in case of ideas or the scanning tools, will be false negative, but in case of biometric it will be false positive. All right, now again let's come back to these questions. During an operational audit of a biometric system used to control physical access, which of the following should be the greatest concern to an IS auditor? Okay, biometric system, so the answer will be false positive. right? Answer will be false positive. Biometric question, right? Which of the following is the greatest risk associated with the vulnerability scanning tools used to identify security weaknesses? Answer is negative. Next question. Which of the following should be the most concern for an IS auditor reviewing an IDS? Again, here also the answer will be false negative.